Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Real Hickory Podcast. Today, I've got a special show planned. It's the first time I'm ever doing one where I've got three people on a show. So bear with me, expanding my technological horizons. And so we're going to have two of our agents on today. I've got Roseann Flowers, who's one of our agents, and Jennifer Elkins, one of our agents. And basically, we're just going to talk about kind of like how the year has gone so far this year, and also maybe talk a little bit about kind of what we're looking at for next year, maybe give advice for buyers and sellers on how to get through transactions, because it kind of, the goalposts have kind of moved a little bit this year with everything going on with COVID. So we're just going to kind of talk about that, and hopefully you guys can learn some things about what's going on in the market. And I think it'll also be great because it'll be two more resources that you guys can call on if you ever need anything or find anything that you need from a real estate perspective. I kind of tie in, and I'm going to try and tie in more as we go on this year, in the 2021 at least, where kind of bring some of our agents in a little bit more to the podcast and kind of give it a way for them to promote themselves, and you can kind of get to know them, sort of a thing. And then also just so, the more people we have, the more input we have, the more people can learn out there. So let's start with Roseann. Roseann, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in real estate and that sort of thing. And then once we get through that, maybe talk about what your biggest challenge was for you this year with COVID and everything.
Hi, I'm Roseann Flowers, and I have been living in the Hickory area for almost 15 years. My family and I moved here in 2006. I have a husband, been married almost 29 years, and we have two kids, 18 years old, and they're 6 months apart. Ask me about that sometime. It's a cool story. I I absolutely love what I do. I have been in the real estate marketing world since I was 21 years old, and just always wanted my real estate license. Was always in marketing with real estate. Absolutely love everything about real estate. Over the years, it just wasn't the right time to get my license, but working in the marketing on the marketing side with Mike and Kathleen has how I started off at Hickory Real Estate Group almost 8 years ago. Yeah, about 8 years ago, I finally decided to get my license. And I am so happy that I did, because it's the perfect job for me. Rolls all of my expertise and training and everything I love. And so I am working in this market throughout the Hickory metro area. And like I said, I love everything about Hickory. I love it's just a great career for me.
Awesome. So one of the things I throw out there at the end there is like, what would you say your biggest challenge was this year? And with everything hitting with COVID, what was the biggest challenge you saw?
When it first started, my first challenge was just learning how to adapt to, and we're essential workers. And so we just had to adapt. People have to still purchase homes and sell homes. There's just no way around it. People have to live. And when it's just a matter of adjusting, really, I did it pretty well. March was crazy. April was crazy. I didn't work so much outside of my home, but I learned that I can do so much for my home office. And luckily, with my experience of working from my home office over the years, it worked very well for me. So I was able to jump in and help my clients by discussing everything. Communication is key in this business. So everything that I did was, by phone, video, learning how to use Zoom. That was it's something that I didn't do much of, but it works really well. Thank goodness, we learned how to already do electronic signatures. So I was able to go send all contracts through our dot loop system, and I was able to send them to my clients and then actually have conversations with them over the phone or through Zoom, which just I didn't skip a beat. yes, we were slow in April, but once May hit, boom, I took off running, and it worked out well, just with a little bit of an adjustment.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like I, you know, I don't want to say that we were ahead of the game or whatever, because I think in some ways we were even maybe a little late to the party with adopting Dotloop to manage our transactions and everything. But man, I really am glad that we did when we did, because it really limited the learning curve for that for everybody. Everybody was already used to it, and it really did make things a lot easier on getting transactions done and kind of how we do business with people. So yeah, it's definitely been very interesting. And well, we'll talk a little bit more about that, I guess, as we go a little bit further. So next, I want to bring on Jennifer Elkins. Jennifer's been with us for a while here too. So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you thought were the biggest challenges this year.
Okay, I'm Jennifer Elkins. I have been with Hickory Real Estate Group for 7 years now. I am from the Catawba County area since high school. Grew up here since high school and went to Appalachian State. And I was an elementary teacher for 7 years, and then decided to get out and stay at home after I had a child. And then joined real estate, got my license, and it was more flexible in one way compared to teaching, but allowed me to have time at home and work around a different schedule. And biggest challenge, I would say, was, besides what Roseann said, real estate, you're really dealing with a lot of emotions with our clients. And I think dealing with fear this year, fear because of the pandemic and because of elections also this past year, I think that was a new thing that I had to work with dealing with clients, is getting them past that, going into homes where other people are living. And also, as sellers, they were very fearful of listing their homes and having people come in. A lot of homes that clients wanted to put on the market, they then delayed or still haven't even listed. So I think that was also another challenge, was working on that fear factor with them and easing their minds going into the process.
It was kind of scary. I mean, we've gotten that March and April, I don't think anybody really knew what the heck was happening. And even from, the company owner, we were just like, all right, well, hopefully we'll get everything as much as we can virtually set up, but we weren't sure if they were going to let us even keep showing houses or, shut things down, and, whether there was going to be some kind of financial issue that was going to come up later. So, fortunately, for the most part, our business kind of really didn't get affected. I mean, I think, like I said, it was slower in the beginning. And then as things rolled in, we got into May and June, it just really kind of took off. But yeah, I mean, I did find in talking to, my clients and also talking to our other agents, I think that was kind of the weirdest time period, was once we realized, all right, we're going to be allowed to do this and that people still want to buy and sell houses, how are we going to keep people safe? And so that was my biggest concern. Like, all right, so like when we have a house and someone's living in it and you're going to have people coming into that house, how are we going to make it as safe as possible so that, people don't spread germs and that sort of thing. And so I think to me, it was just changing that mindset of, kind of like how we're going to deal with this, and the concern of, just the uncertainty of everything, I just think really stunk. So, but definitely glad we're on, mostly on the other side of this. There's still a lot going on behind the scenes, and, there's still a lot of businesses that, I kind of really feel bad for that, haven't come back, and some may not ever come back. Unfortunately, I look at the restaurant business, some of the companies were able to adapt a little bit better, and, dealing with takeout and outdoor dining and that sort of thing. And, but some people, some of the businesses weren't really conducive to that. The type of food that they had, wasn't conducive for takeout, or wasn't, really good for delivery or anything like that. And, or outdoor dining, they didn't have space to be able to move people outside. So I think that kind of made it a little bit difficult. And, we kind of, our hearts are out to the people in those industries. Um, but the lack of inventory, I think, really spurred people to kind of do stuff that maybe they wouldn't have done. Um, if we hadn't had the pandemic, I think, people sitting at home for long periods of time, and, an open, that open layout that everybody wanted was great, when nobody was home. But when you have 5 people in a house, I think everybody kind of wants their own space. So, and I think that kind of shifted what people want. You guys kind of see the same thing?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Larger homes, more rooms, extra rooms.
Yep.
All right. So one of the things, if there's something out there that you wish people outside of real estate knew about our local market, what would it be? And either you guys can jump in on that.
Jennifer, you want to answer?
Uh,
I've got one. I mean, I would love to tell people not to believe in Zestimates.
Okay.
I hear it all the time. My house is worth blah blah blah, or I want people to understand that Hickory Real Estate Group also has a feature that you can look up your home value. However, you can get a general idea, but really it is not accurate. You have to have the expertise and the training by real estate agents to help you, give you a more, take that price range of your price value, and basically do the work behind the scenes to do the comparables to figure out what your house is actually worth. So as real estate agents, we look at reports and we look at comparables, and we go into each and every home listing or sold listing, and look at photographs and compare them, and look at the features and look at the square footage. And we actually take a lot of that information, and we have to come up with a better price range that's closer to what is accurate. If you want an actual home value that is precise, you would call someone of an appraiser to give you a precise number. But that Zestimate is so basic. It is not accurate. And I just want you to understand that. So that's just something that I wanted to put out there.
And to build on that, also tax value. A lot of them want to go by tax value. And why are they asking $50,000 more than tax value? But that doesn't adjust like the market does.
I mean, they've reset the tax value every 4 years. And so, and a lot of times when they do it, it's a historical value too. So like, even if it's every 4 years. So if you're in year 3 of that 4-year cycle, that value a lot of times is still based on 2 years before that, even sometimes. So you might be looking at, if we're at 2020 now, you might be looking at values that are really like 2017, and the market's gone up quite a bit since then. So, yeah, I think it's really hard. I think Zillow can be a really good tool to maybe kind of give yourself a little bit, like if before you have somebody come look at your house, or just to give you, as a consumer, as a really good idea, but it's definitely not the be all end all. And, I think, and it's really hard without us seeing your house. I think that's probably the biggest thing is that, real estate is such a visual thing, and like, see the finishes in your house, and, smell it. I mean, like, it sounds gross, but like, make sure that, I mean, like, every house has got a vibe, every house has got a smell. And if sometimes it smells not great. So we need to fix that. And so that things like that, I think, really factor in. And that I think sometimes, we have to educate the public, and maybe we need to do a better job of educating them. And that's why we kind of have this forum to kind of do things like that to get it out there. But that's a pretty good one. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Jen?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, and also with the tax failures, some homeowners also they fight that value too. I know that we did last year and got a pretty significant amount reduced on our tax value, and some don't. And you don't know who has and who hasn't. So that's not really a number you can lean on.
All right. Well, something that jumped out at me this year is how many new listings, when they would come on the market, would go into multiple offers. How do you guys prepare your buyers when making an offer on a house when you think you're going to be, dealing with multiple offers?
I talk to
Okay.
buyers about whether that is a number they feel comfortable with, even if it doesn't appraise at that. A lot of people not in real estate think that you can only sell a house at the appraised value, but sometimes that doesn't happen. And if a buyer is willing to pay more for a house, then they have to really be able to pay more for that house if the appraisal comes in low. It doesn't always have to be renegotiated, and that's what they think always happens.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, the seller still holds
That
some of the
happened.
cards, in that situation, and they may not be willing to come down, and so that's a risk that you run when you make an offer on a house. Roseann, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I had a couple situations where someone put in an offer and it did not appraise, and that seller refused to come down. They actually decided to take the house off the market altogether. That was their personal situation. They really didn't have to sell. They were really basically testing the market. So my buyer had to go back out and look for another house. And I was on the seller side with another situation where we actually had we had an offer for $20,000 over the asking price, and it concerned me because I knew the range, and I was concerned that it was on the very, very, very high side of the range. And we had to communicate and discuss that, and it turned out that it did appraise. We were lucky, but it doesn't always happen. I had another buyer who was purchasing a house, and she made an offer of $5,000 over the asking price. And I told her that we discussed it, communication, we discussed the market, told her, what the price ranges were. I told her it was on the higher side, maybe even over the price range. It did not appraise. And so this seller refused. He didn't want to come down. Eventually he did. They negotiated halfway, and they split the difference. But it doesn't happen all the time. Communication is the key with any working with buyers or sellers. Communication is definitely something you have to discuss all these variables and situations beforehand that could possibly come up. And that's the only thing you can do is make sure you talk to your people and let them understand.
So what are your thoughts on, because I think in past markets, a lot of our markets have been driven by first time buyers a lot. I feel like, up until this year, I think, a lot of the transactions that have happened have been like kind of more on the first time buyer side. And a lot of times when you're on that side, those buyers often will need help with closing costs. How are you advising people? Because like when you get into multiple offer situations, it can be tricky. So if, let's say you have a $150,000 house and the buyer says that they need help with $5,000 in closing costs, so you do 150, well, that seller is really only getting 145 if they're going to be helping with closing costs, because they're going to be giving money back for closing costs. I think, and a lot of people get confused by that. A lot of it is, I think, like people watch on TV and they say, on House Hunters, they're like, oh yeah, and they paid this much of their closing costs or whatever, and they think that's going to happen. Or the lender will say, hey, why don't you ask for closing costs or whatever? What are you guys advising your clients on that? Because I haven't seen a lot of houses where people ask for closing costs kind of go through lately. So what are you guys seeing, and what are you advising your clients on that?
I tell my clients to really talk to their lender and know whether they really need that closing cost or if it's just something that they would rather have. I think that makes a big difference. A lot of buyers say they want that, but then once you talk to the lender, it's not something they really need. But I also think the condition of the home, if they're going to need a lot of money when they move in to fix stuff up, or it's not a really updated house, I think the closing costs up front help with that. Whereas if it's a house they can move right into and they don't really need the closing costs, then they need to eliminate that off of their offer to make their offer seem better and appraised easier.
How about you, Roseann? What are you seeing there?
I was going to say basically the same thing. Communication. It goes back to communication. In any situation, you have to communicate with your buyers and discuss ahead of time what their expectations are and what their plans are. And we have to talk about budgeting. And yes, I do speak with their lenders as well, or have them speak with their lenders. I agree.
So I would say, I mean, I'm most of the time I end up on the listing agent side. I mean, I'm really trying to kind of phase out a little bit from production and focus more on the company as time goes on. But yeah, I still have some, past clients and stuff that, I still work with. And when I'm on the listing side of it, often I'll tell my sellers, if you have two deals and one of them involves closing costs, paying buyers closing costs, and one that doesn't, often the one that doesn't, even if it's not for as much money, you have a better shot at, because adding the closing costs in and then having it appraised. So let's say, like you're already at the top of the market and it's $150,000 house, but the person offers 155 with 5,000 in closing costs. If that house doesn't appraise for that 5,000, 155, even though the real value number on that house is 150 and it only appraises for 150, that buyer, there's a chance that buyer may not even be able to buy it without getting that closing cost money. And if it doesn't appraise properly, and then the seller's left hanging and hoping that maybe there's a backup offer or something like that. So, I mean, at this point, like I'm almost encouraging most, unless it's the only offer on the table, not to go with a deal that offers closing costs. And so I think that maybe is something I think buyers really need to look at and really understand. And even lenders need to understand that, to be competitive and actually get these deals. I think a lot of times, like I said, I mean, I think the lenders sometimes will encourage that. And I'm almost thinking the lenders need to, if it's going to be a competitive house, they need to help the buyer figure out how they can do it without closing costs being paid by the seller, because it makes it difficult. Now, I do understand that there are some programs out there. So like in certain price ranges and certain income brackets, there's actually programs that lenders can help. There's help that's available from local government organizations and stuff like that. So again, I just encourage everybody to make sure they talk to their lenders, and again, keep that communication open so that, they can really get what they need. So anybody want to add anything else on this one before we wrap up this topic?
No, that's good.
All right. So, kind of circling back, I kind of touched on it a little bit for sellers, but what are you guys seeing the biggest challenge for sellers in this market? Looking at our statistics, I don't know if you guys I'm sure you guys look at it all the time since we talk about it all the time as a company, but we're at a point now where it's almost less than like 1 month of inventory out there on the market. So there's essentially like, the second house comes on, it just goes. How are you guys managing your sellers in this, and what kind of challenges are you seeing from your sellers?
I know Jennifer touched on it before, how some people they've held back from selling. I have some who held back for a while, but then came on. when I speak to my sellers, again, it goes back to communication, talking to them and asking them questions. What are their thoughts? What are their fears? Why, what's holding them back? Some people, their concerns were COVID and people walking through the door. Well, as a company, we have all made an extra effort to put better videos together for our listings. Having those walkthrough videos can help those sellers who are afraid of having people walk through their door, because if we have better videos offered for our listings, then you're only going to have the most those people who are most interested walk through the doors, which is going to cut down on the amount of people who are going to view the house in person. That was one of the fears that and I think that's helped tremendously. More buyers out there right now, especially the millennials, are searching online and they are looking at homes, basically buying homes with almost sight unseen. The very last step is walking through that door. They already know what they want. They already know what they're looking for. So those sellers who are fearful, there are ways around being protected. Giving you instructions on how to prepare your home for showings, turning on all the lights yourself, and opening up all the cabinet doors and the closet doors a little bit, so not as many people are pulling on doors and handles. That's one of the biggest fears. Second thing, sellers, they are concerned because if they put their house on the market, there isn't enough inventory for them to search for homes. But here's the thing, just this year, just several years ago, the average price of a home was about $148, just several years ago. In 2019, the average median price range was $177,000. This year is $200,000, the median house price. Okay, this is what homes, people are out there searching for homes, and these sellers are making quite a bit of a profit on their homes. And these sellers, if we can get more listings, the sellers will be making more profit. Second part is that our interest rates are so low. The interest rates are hovering around 2.5%. So these people who are looking to purchase the larger homes are able to afford those larger homes because the interest rates are so low. So yes, it is challenging with some of the sellers, but again, it goes back to communication and then finding out what exactly is their fear and trying to address it and trying to help them through it. I've been on the seller side quite a bit this year. I've had more sales from the seller side than the buyer side. And then I've also had multiple where I've worked both sides, where they have sold and upgraded to, or downsized. Some people sold their homes and downsized to a smaller home because they wanted that flex. They wanted to make the money, pay off the mortgage, and have a smaller mortgage with the interest rates that are so low. So if we can get some more listings, and we have those buyers out there, so and that's basically where it is for me. That's what happened with me this year.
Okay. How about you, Jen?
I think it is their next step is the biggest challenge for sellers right now, what they're going to do after, and them really realizing, talking to a lender about what they're capable of doing if they can purchase a house, move into their next house, and then list their house. That takes away some of the fear factor. I know that some of them stress about that because they may have a month or two with two mortgages, but explaining to them how fast the market's moving, they may not end up with two mortgages if it sells quickly. So I think they really need to understand where they stand with what their next step is. If they still have to live in the house and have to sell in order to purchase that next house, finding the next house at the right time and selling their house at the same time has been a huge challenge, because there's not inventory for them either, for either their downsized house or their larger house that they are wanting. So they're struggling to find their next house, which is delaying putting the house they're living on the market now.
And it's kind of scary for sellers. I mean, because sometimes, you don't want to, I find that a lot of them just don't want to put their house on the market, like you said, because they're afraid they're not going to be able to find something to buy in that time period. And so I think it goes back to what Roseann was saying even earlier about communication. Like, maybe we need to get them to talk to a lender earlier in the process. Maybe they can afford to buy another house with a lower down payment and then sell their house later, since the market is so strong right now. I mean, we never know if some crazy thing could happen, in a really short period of time, but it looks like interest rates are going to not change in the coming future. There's not a lot of building happening right now that is going to change the amount of inventory that's on the market. So, if a seller is holding back on selling their house because they can't find the right house, maybe we need to switch the conversation and say, hey, why don't you talk to a lender? Maybe you can buy the house that you want, and I'll help you make sure that your house is ready so that when the time comes, you can sell it. And I've had several this year that have done that. And I know you guys have had several people that have done that this year and been successful with it. A lot of times I think we put on ourselves that, we don't want to feel like we're telling people to risk things, because there is risk involved in it. But I think if we look at the numbers and how little inventory is out there, if their house is in good condition and move-in ready, and priced appropriately, chances are it's going to go that first month or so that it's on the market. And, that's just what the numbers say. And so if they know that going in, then, maybe that gives them a little bit of leeway. And there's programs for lenders out there that, if you buy a house with, maybe less money down, some of the lenders will even let them recast the loan after they sell their house and still keep their same mortgage, interest rate and payment time period without having to redo the whole loan. So again, I think it's super important that people, talk to their lenders and make sure that, that they know all their options, because I think there are some really good opportunities out there for people, if they can jump on them. And I think, even if you buy something today, the way the market's going, and, months from now, their house, by the time they put on the market, might be worth more than it was 2 or 3 months ago because of the way things are going. So I think if we can just kind of keep that line of communication open, maybe we can get some listings out there, and have more for our buyers, because right now there's just way more buyers out there than there are sellers. And it's kind of, I know it's really tough on them.
Sorry, it goes back to communication again. I have discussed with several of my clients, to have a backup plan. I'm like, here's plan B. Where's your plan? What's your plan B? If we can't find your house right away, but your house sells quickly, because most likely, well, what's your plan B? So I have had several clients move in with family or a temporary rental, because they knew they were going to sell their house so quickly. And as soon as they got the money from their house, we went out, searched very quickly for another home. There's a way around it. Again, it's just communication, trying to find out what's going to work best for each individual.
And I think
a lot of sellers that have been really grateful that I pushed them to find their next house before listing. They were very fearful of that, but they were grateful because the process is so much easier, moving out, getting settled, and then listing their house. They don't have to be packed up, moving on the same day they're also selling. I've had two sellers that were very, very grateful that they ended up going that route instead of the buy sell same day situation.
Yeah, I don't think there's probably, if, as far as stressful things in life, I don't know that there's a more stressful thing than lining up, closing a one house and closing another house and trying to have everything match the same day, because there's just so many variables. And then sometimes you'll even throw a third house in there where, like, someone has a house they have to sell, they're buying something, and then the next people are buying something. So you have like three, sometimes even four deals that are all contingent on each other. And one thing gets messed up in one thing gets messed up in the chain, and it screws everything up, and eventually works out. But again, like, if you can eliminate one of those links of the chain, it's way less stressful. It may cost a little bit more money to do it, but I still feel like, I mean, we moved this year, and it's the first time we ever did it that way, where we bought something and then sold our house later. And it definitely helped having that, that gap of being able to get my house ready to sell. And also, kind of, I wasn't forced to move into the new house like as quickly as possible. So, again, like, if you can afford to do it, and if you can be smart about how you do it, I think that it's definitely a way to go. And something else I wanted to kind of throw out there. One of the things that I've seen is, because the market's so hot with seller expectations, and I think sometimes that, unfortunately, sometimes we have to manage that sometimes, because, we do get their house under contract so quickly. Often, hopefully that's the goal. We get their house under contract quickly. A lot of times you're dealing with multiple offers. And I think sometimes it gives the sellers a false sense of, like, of invincibility of their house, where, well, like, if something comes up from an inspection standpoint, they're like, well, someone else will just buy it. And that's not always the case. Have you guys run into things like that this year? I mean, we gotta kind of have to be careful, because we don't want to call up, individuals or whatever. But have you seen that along the way? Maybe not even with your clients, but other parts of deals, and kind of like how you advise your people to avoid that.
Yeah, and I think if buyers are offering over list price, they're expecting it to be at a better condition too. But then on the other hand, the sellers are in the back of their mind thinking of all of those other offers that they received. But a lot of times, if you terminate that contract and it goes back on the market, you don't end up with top dollar the second go round, or multiple offers the second go round. So they may end up with a lesser value, a lesser contract if they terminate. And that buyer is still going to have their home inspection done too, and come up with a list of things. So I think it is laying it down to the seller of the different things that could come up, the different what's going to happen with the next buyer too, if they do choose to go that route. And it may be more beneficial just to do the few repairs that the buyer has asked for and move on and sell in a few weeks, instead of putting it back on the market and another month or two going by.
Oh, I have to agree. It's
Yeah.
back to communication. Just discussing all these things with your buyers or sellers, and making sure they understand from the beginning and throughout the whole process. You're there to guide them. That's what we do. Our job is to guide our fiduciary duties are to our buyers and sellers. We're supposed to help guide them and explain, and maybe it may go back to negotiations. It may not be, maybe a lot of times when inspection reports come up, whether it's under these conditions or any other conditions, there is a way to negotiate and come to some sort of a compromise with them. Maybe you're not going to fix all of the items that are requested for repair, but maybe some of them. And again, just communication.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Another thing that I think a lot of times that it's hard sometimes to get sellers or to convince sellers to do it. But one of the things that I think is important is if you've got time to do a pre-listing home inspection, so you can head
Yeah.
off things beforehand too, so that you're not
Mhm.
stuck in a situation where you're not expecting things. And I think when the market wasn't as good, I feel like people were a lot more open to doing that because, they didn't want to be like, have like, some other new shiny object come on the market and, maybe someone will cancel their deal and go to that one because this one looks better and that sort of thing. But I still think there's value in doing that. There's value in fixing something, you want to make sure everything's fixed the right way. If you have a pre-listing home inspection, but sometimes it's a lot better to fix it under your terms versus someone else's terms as well. And that's something I'll tell my sellers a lot of time. Everything needs to be done properly. If it's something that needs to be done that, should be a licensed professional, then a licensed professional should do that. But again, like, to do it on your terms versus someone else's, I think you're always in a better position of power in that situation. So that's just kind of my thing to throw out there is to, don't be afraid of the pre-listing inspection because again, it'll be a lot cheaper for you to fix it on your terms than it will be on someone else's. So
Less opinions involved.
yeah. So if you guys could wave a magic wand and create the perfect house that you knew could sell in 100 days, or not even 100 days, but you could sell 100 of the same house over and over, what would that house look like? Because I want to encourage, and the reason I'm asking the question is I really want to encourage anybody that's maybe a builder thinking about building houses, or maybe someone investing in a building company that's going to build houses. What would that perfect house be that you could sell a bunch of and never stop? Or at least
I talk to builders. I
relative
talk
terms.
about this all the time. I always talk about this. I actually have a client who's a builder, and we've discussed this before too. That magic number. Okay, so the median house price this year for 2020 is $200,000, right? Most of the people out there are looking for homes somewhere in that ballpark under $200,000. I would say a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath between 1,800 and 2,000 square feet would be that magic ticket item that would sell very quickly. And with some backyard space, patio, porch, some place for people to gather outside because this year COVID conditions, but that gathering area, you have to have some kind of space for an office or a den or both. So the three to 4 bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath with that office space or a den or both. Something like I said, 18 to 2,000 square feet would be the hot ticket item. Would go very, very fast.
All right.
Yeah,
And
I think that 2,000 square feet is what people are looking for, and that bonus room. Everyone wants the 3 bedrooms, but they want a bonus room too, or a basement. I've had a lot that only want a house with a basement.
Yeah.
And I think that in the exterior, there has to be some space where people can go. Everyone's wanting that outdoor living space.
Mm-hmm.
The past 2 years, I would say, everyone wants something to hang out on out back, or a nice front porch or something. I think someplace outside, half acre would be ideal.
But I was going to say half acre, yeah.
So I'm going to take a different tack, and I'm going to say I agree that all those, if you were to build those houses, they would sell. And probably, unfortunately, if you talk to the builders, they probably can't build that 2,000 square foot house though for less than $300,000 probably if it actually were to build. So that's probably one of the hardest parts of that. But I think if they were to keep it under 300, I think they probably still could sell them.
I agree.
My tack though is going to be on either townhouses or condos, like 1-level townhouses or condos with a garage.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think if you could have that, because I think there's a lot of the population, I think that is still looking to kind of downsize, or if not downsize, look at something where they've got something that if they want to travel and that sort of thing. And this year's maybe a little bit different. But I think that one level townhome or condo, right around even up, I think you can even get a little bit more for those, even around the $300,000 range. I think people will pay, as long as there's, it's in a neighborhood that has, some amenities of walking trails and that sort of thing. But if it was me, if I was going to design and build something, that's probably the route I would go. And again, I think we could make, 100 of them and sell every one this year, if they were built. So, anyway, some inspiration to some of our builders that are out there, maybe that thinking about hanging on the sidelines. I think there's definitely, a huge market for those houses. I know I have several coming on this year. I have a builder that I work with that's in the process of building some houses in that, low 200, 250 range. And so we'll have some more of them this year. But otherwise, there's not a lot going on out there. So hopefully, I think the builders apparently are up against some stuff. Apparently lumber prices are extremely high. And they've come down a little bit supposedly, but lumber prices are extremely high right now, and it's not helping the market as far as like how much it costs to build a house. And land is actually scarce. It's hard to find land that's actually already developed with water and sewer and that sort of thing. So I think people are struggling to find that as well. So we'll see what happens in this coming year. I'm going to predict that we're going to have by mid-year, I'll bet you we'll see a lot more construction out there that maybe will hopefully help us clear up some of our inventory. But yeah, I just think, that's the key to everything right now is that, we need to build up that inventory so that, we've got a little bit more room to, we have something for the buyers. There's household formation happening, people are getting married and getting older, and we're not creating enough new houses to just make up for that, or even people moving into our area. I mean, I've seen a lot of people that have come, that have come to town this year. Have you, let me ask a different way. Cause it's based on talking to you guys. And since I talk to you guys all the time, what are you seeing from people from other areas coming in? Like, have you seen a difference in people looking at our area, maybe getting away from cities and stuff? Have you seen any of that?
Yes, I do. I'm seeing it, and the trend all over the country is there are more people leaving the cities and wanting to live in the rural areas because they're working from home. I mean, there are more people that are working from home, and it's going to continue on. I think that this is a whole new, a whole new way of life. I think because of COVID, they've realized that people can work more from their home offices, and I think it'll those offices that are located downtown are going to be smaller, or just they're going to close them. I see people coming from. I have clients call me and come here from New York, Pennsylvania. I've had people from Ohio, California, several people from California. It's just they're coming from everywhere. And the tax break here, I think, is the tax rates here are reasonable for homes, and in comparison from New York and Pennsylvania and California, the prices of homes are less here. So I do see an influx from those areas.
I've seen a big change in the reason why people are moving. Usually they're moving because of jobs, but the past two or three that have moved to North Carolina from another state was because of family, moving closer to family, both younger generation moving closer to parents and parents moving closer to their children. So, and I think the working from home has allowed them to do that too. But I've seen a big shift in it not being so centralized around their job moving them lately.
And maybe that's something that comes out of this eventually. Maybe after everything's said and done, maybe the key to this is that maybe it gives people a little bit more flexibility on where, they can live more where they want to live versus feeling like they have to live somewhere that doesn't necessarily match their values and kind of where they want to be. And so hopefully that's a positive that comes out of this. I mean, I think there have been some positives that have come out of this. But again, I also don't want to minimize the hardship that it's caused to a lot of people too. So, just not, from a lifestyle standpoint, from a job standpoint, and even, from a pure health standpoint. I mean, we lost a lot of people in this, in our country over this. So I don't want to minimize that. But again, from every hardship, you kind of want to take something from it. If we don't learn something from it, and if things don't change from when hardships happen, then we didn't learn anything, then shame on us.
Very true.
So what upgrade do you think impresses new buyers, like that sellers, when you tell someone to improve their house or something, what type of upgrades to houses do you think buyers are most impressed by?
You know, the classic desirable upgrade is still kitchen and baths. It will always be kitchen and baths. However, open concept is one of the number one things that people are searching for every time. I talk to someone, they're like, oh, we want the open concept, and but now from what I am hearing as well is taking making an extra space in the house. I see even some contractors changing around floor plans. I've read a lot of places where contractors are changing floor plans around to include, a fourth bedroom. So they're moving some floor plans and updating a room to let's say you have a den and you create another space for an office, or the basement is converted to another room so that people have that school space or office space or
a Zoom
whatever.
room.
The Zoom room. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it.
And I'd say also a lot of people are doing like the outdoor kitchen areas. I've had a lot of buyers really ooh and ah over those types of areas. Something to make that house stand out, different than your typical cookie cutter, especially if it's in a neighborhood where a lot of the houses are the same or similar. That outdoor kitchen may be something that makes them choose that house over others.
Yeah. And the one I'm going to throw out is flooring consistency. So, when people have a house, and
that's a
if
good
you
one.
have like laminate floors and then wood floors and then vinyl floors and then tile floors, and like you have all these different heights and stuff, I think that's one of the things I think that you can do. If you can, try and minimize the number of flooring transitions in your house, I think that really helps a lot, because I think that's one of the most daunting things, especially once you move into a house. You're not going to want to really mess with the floors. And so you can move stuff into the middle of the room and paint things. You can, do a lot of things, but changing the floors, I find, are just, really, it's kind of a bear. And so if you have the floors already set, and they're, if you have all hardwood floors, or as long as they're mostly consistent, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think that biggest upgrade. If you can, if somebody's got, like I said, if you got vinyl in the kitchen and it's a wood look vinyl in the kitchen, but then you've got hardwood floors in another place, and the floors don't really match or whatever. And sometimes that's all you can do. But, if you're going to change one of them, maybe, try and get them to match a little bit more. And I think that's something that, it seems to be buyers really seem to like that. So, but yeah, I definitely, again, like, kitchens, I think having that extra office space, more outdoor space, like you said, for, like the outdoor kitchen area, that's definitely something that, that definitely helps. And especially if you're going to, if you're going to entertain now, like in this world that we're in right now, like nobody wants, a bunch of people in their house probably, but everybody can kind of hang out outside and spread out and interact with people. And there's still definitely something that I think kind of hurts people and not having that interaction that we're used to, I think. And that's something that I'm craving. I can't wait till we can get back to that. I mean, you guys know, we normally do our office meetings as a company, and we'll do it at a restaurant or whatever. And, I really miss the opportunity for us all to get together and talk and that sort of thing. And, or, the amount of times people come to the office, there's, we used to have 5 or 6 people at any given time that were at the office. And now a lot of times it's just like 1 or 2 people here and there. So I kind of, I do definitely miss that, and I look forward to that happening again. But sorry, I got off on a tangent there, but again, like, I think
I miss our Christmas party.
what's that? Yeah, we usually have a pretty cool, a fun Christmas party, and we weren't able to have that this year. We didn't want to be a super spreader event, and and so it was the right choice, but it was a hard choice. But anyway. All right. So what predictions do you guys have for this coming year? We'll kind of wrap up based on that. I'll have one more thing at the end I'm going to throw out there, but what do you guys predict? I guess, Roseann, what's your prediction for this year? More of the same, or do you see something different happening?
I see pretty much the same. I think we're going to continue because the interest rates, I think, so far from what they're predicting, are going to stay pretty steady. If they increase, they're going to increase very, very slowly and minimally from what I'm reading and learning. So I think it's pretty much the same going forward. It always slows down a little bit during the holidays, but then after the holidays, it starts to pick up again. And I'm hopeful for that. I am talking to several clients who are preparing their homes to list in January. And so I'm hopeful.
Good.
Yeah, I don't see anything big changing. I'm hoping for no more listings, but I think it's going to be very similar to the past 2 years, where we just need a lot more listings for all of our buyers.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way. I mean, it doesn't, there is some new construction happening out there, but still not at that pace. I'm going to predict by mid-year, though, I think we'll probably see, and I don't know anything, but my guess is that someone's going to probably make an investment in our area for like some, more housing. I think it's just inevitable. You can't have the numbers that we've had for the last few years and not have that. So I would not be surprised if we end up with maybe a couple, even some of the big home builders, national builders, look at our area and to try and develop some stuff because we need it. And I think the Charlotte market's gotten it, and Winston-Salem. I mean, like, they're all in those areas, but they've kind of not. I think we've been too much of a small fish, I guess, in the pond. Or a small pond, I guess. But I think the opportunity is there for someone to come in and do really well with it. And so that'll be my prediction for by mid-year. I bet you we have at least 1 or 2 of those big builders are going to come in and really make a splash. And I think it'll be good. I think it'll help us. And I think it'll maybe help alleviate some of our.
Well, I think with Highway 16, expanding. And from Charlotte area, I think all those, I've been saying this for years. I just see it expanding and those builders finally coming over to this side. And I mean, they're down by the Denver area. They're just creeping further and further north. I mean, the Charlotte metro area Hickory is encompassing of the Charlotte metro area. That Highway 16 is a development. It's a long-term development plan. This is all, we're supposed to merge together as one big happy family. So it's getting there. It's just a matter of time.
I can definitely see especially by 2022, they say that they kind of extended out how long it's going to take to finish that up. But again, I think people will see that. I think Charlotte is growing at such a wonderful rate. And there's just not a lot to choose from there. So I could definitely see from a investment standpoint, that whole Balls Creek, in Newton, south, the southern part of Newton,
Yeah.
Conover. I really could see an explosion in development in those pockets at this point. So time will tell, but that would
We're
be my
already building Dollar Generals, so it's about to happen.
good one. Yeah, there's definitely that's probably a good indicator.
Indication is coming.
All right. Do you guys have any questions for me? I'll kind of wrap up, but I guess I kind of asked a bunch of questions. You guys have any questions for me on what you kind of about real estate or anything going on?
We talked about the challenge of like the pandemic, but this past year I've had, because of our weather that we've had this year, I think that has been the bigger challenge. Wet crawl space, wet basements. I've had more septic issues this year than I've had my whole career.
Me too.
I think that has been a bigger challenge to me at this point. And having sellers look into that stuff or be prepared for that stuff. But I think that's been a big thing this year. It has upset some transactions, but also working out how to get those repairs done in order to move forward with them.
And I think that maybe goes back to like encouraging people to do like a pre-listing inspection too, so they can, again, like maybe address some of these things ahead of time. So they don't, but yeah, our weather really, it is kind of crazy. When I first moved here, I moved here in 2005, and, the summers were really dry. I mean, like, for the first 5 or 6 years I lived here, I mean, like, and we went through one crazy drought where, Lake Hickory, some of the docks were getting drying up and everything. It was so bad, but I knew that was a weird time period, but it kind of seems like hopefully it's not a permanent thing. And, but it's definitely changed, and we've definitely become more of a wet climate. I mean, I remember picking plants for our house and like trying to do it in a semi, like, a dry, like more of a dry landscape. So you didn't have to water things or whatever. And you don't even have to think about that anymore, because we've had so much rain in the last few years. So I guess at some point, I guess that'll change, and maybe we'll go back to, a little bit less rain, but yeah, that's definitely been an issue. It's come up on a lot of houses, just unexpectedly, as well. It's just not stuff you can control. But again, I think it's one of those things where maybe we could head it off a little bit if we had encouraged people more to do those pre-listing home inspections, and maybe we can head off some of these issues, before we get tied up when it's an emergency while you have it under contract.
Right. And I've had a lot of buyers that prefer not to deal with the septic systems anymore because of issues.
Yeah. And that's always a risk, I guess, when you have a house with a septic tank. It's, the day they put it in, they don't guarantee it. So, I mean, it's just, most of them work, and most of the time it works out, but there's always that danger. So, but for the most part, they generally work well.
I'm knocking on wood here. Mine has been okay. But
I would say that the wet crawl space and basement thing, I think that's turned into, that's gotten a little weird this year in the last couple of years. And then, also just that lack of inventory. So hopefully on the other side of this, we'll keep encouraging people. I think that the key takeaway from today is really about communication. I think it's having those conversations, sometimes difficult conversations in the beginning, so that, we can kind of head things off and not have a problem later from the buyer side and the seller side when it comes to making offers to when it comes to preparing our house for selling it. So anyway, anything else you guys wanted to add before we wrap up?
I'm good.
All right.
No,
well,
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Thanks you guys too. I appreciate everything that you guys do for us and that you do for the community. I think helping people buy and sell homes is one of the most gratifying things I think that you can do as a person. And so it always feels good, going through that with people. And you guys are really, really good at helping people through that process. So I appreciate both of you. Hopefully you guys have a great Christmas and New Year, and hopefully 2021 will be an amazing year, and we'll kind of get back to whatever normal is. We'll get back to a little bit more of that. So thank you guys for being on today, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
See you guys.
Bye.
All right. So I'll edit the end.
Oh, she jumped off.
Jumped off. All right. All right. Well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And like I said, I'll edit the end out, but I think it was good. I think we had a good conversation.
Yeah.
So, awesome. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and let us know if you need anything.
Okay. Thank you.
See you. Thanks. Bye. Bye.